Remember the first time you downloaded a song on your family computer? Was it with Napster? Limewire? Be honest, did it crash? We're going to rehash all of your MP3 mishaps and memories today because I'm Jericho Sav, and this is the Y2Kulture Podcast. No, we're good. I'm rolling. I'm in. I'm locked in. We're good. Okay. Whew. I don't know, but here we go. 3, 2, 1. Well, here we are on the first episode of the Y2Kulture Podcast. I have one of my oldest friends, Des McMahon, here with me. Des, when I told you the topic of what we were going to talk about today, I chose you specifically because of your qualifications. Why don't you tell me a little bit about those and see how it lines up with the topic today?
I guess we'll call them qualifications.
You're qualified. You're qualified.
Hard,
You're more qualified than a lot of people I know.
It's hard to feel like at the end of a pandemic, pressing buttons and playing music to a crowd of people is some type of a qualification. But
yep.
I guess we'll start there. My name's Des McMahon. I've been a DJ, music producer, and more recently a teacher and educator in the field of music business, music production, and even more recently, having relocated back to Philadelphia, probably focusing a little bit more on the production front and the teaching, and hopefully some touring soon. But we'll get into that later. Been involved, been a huge music purist and collector for a long time.
Sure.
And I think you and I are going to get into some good conversation about some nostalgic moments of how we used to collect music back in the day.
For sure. So really, with the focus of what we're going to talk about today, Des and I are going to explore how CDs pretty much became useless thanks to the MP3 and why ruining your family PC is one of the most formative experiences you could have had thanks to downloading Napster and Limewire, and pretty much just our own personal ordeals and everything that we went through and pretty much crashing each of our perspective family computers.
It wasn't always porn.
It was not always porn. It was just always that Bill Clinton, I did not have sexual relations with that woman, but I did go to www. I can't tell you how many times I heard that. But the main thing that I wanted to start with today is, what an MP3 is. Obviously, everybody nowadays uses them day in, day out, and it became pretty much weaved into our own culture. So what is an MP3? What should people know about it?
Well, I think we should probably talk about MP3s and waves together.
Okay.
So the MP3, I think it was a German guy that created the MP3 in 1993. And then prior to that, in 91, I think Microsoft were responsible for creating the wave.
Okay.
The wave being a file format. Now, when we started to get computers that would have the ability to rip the songs off the CDs we were listening to and getting them onto our computer's hard drive, they would, most of the time, they would rip them. I believe that was the term that was common then, was ripping off of a CD, which is probably not the best choice of words, given that everybody ended up starting. It's the greatest rip off in the music industry. Not really. Depends on the perspective we're looking at.
Yeah.
But originally, if I can remember correctly, back in the day when you would load up Windows Media Player to listen to, trying to think of something my parents probably would have listened to, like Moby. We were talking about Moby quite a lot lately.
I've been listening to a lot of Moby lately.
I had to check. I had to take a look at his tattoos that he got recently.
Oh yeah, he's got some wild tattoos.
Animal rights on his arms and stuff.
Yeah,
but Moby, Fatboy Slim, definitely that era of music is probably where we're at. Probably what is that, between 95 and 98?
Yeah.
But so I'm not going to get into the technicalities of like what an MP3 is because you can just go on Wikipedia and read that yourself.
Exactly. Well, I appreciate the brevity.
The important thing that we want to consider is that when you would rip music off of a CD, and it'd be in a WAV format, that's an uncompressed, lossless file, meaning, let's just put it this way, the file size is enormous. And if some of you remember what it was like to have a computer in the late 90s, early 2000s, terabytes hard drives weren't around then. We were working with, a couple of megabytes that you would share with your parents. So it became more accessible to download MP3s when they became the popular norm because they were compressed audio files that the file size would be insanely shorter. I mean, not shorter, smaller.
Yeah.
Compared to like, you're looking at, I'm trying to think, like a WAV probably was like 15,000. No, I bet you it was more than, I'm trying to think. It was a WAV average when I'm bouncing away, like a WAV out of like Ableton or something like that is like 46 megabyte versus like downloading. When you would load up Limewire, you'd go to the file size section and then look for something that's between what was it, like 9,000 kilobytes versus 15,000 kilobytes. And
and that would always factor into like my decision what the download speed would be like too, because I was so terrified of anything that had to do with torrents.
Exactly.
And it just instilled that fear in me almost instantly.
Yes.
So I was always particular, and it especially with just those one-off songs, you would always go thugh like 3 or 4 that were just terrible quality, and just no.
Should we touch on that?
I was gonna segue. You beat me to it. I was gonna segue right into that and say, just what the difference between audio quality is across MP3s.
So with the standard CD format WAV, you're looking at what's, again, apologies for the technicalities, but it's a 16-bit 44.1 kilohertz wave. You can convert that into a high quality. This is the standard. The standard kilobytes per second would be 320 for an MP3.
Okay,
and that's I'm
not gonna fact check you on this. I'm sure
we're gonna do this. We're gonna do this live because
we're gonna do this live. He's pulling out his phone just to make sure that he's right about this point. I really do appreciate the attention to detail on this, our first episode.
Bitrate. Thank you. Bitrate. I was right too. That's the annoying part. I was just making sure I'm not talking complete shit.
Okay. So let's
I will talk some shit. But
we'll segue back into it.
So bitrate.
Yes, bitrate.
The common bit rates that we would download back in the day would start at the highest quality, which would be what most, if you're downloading music to go play in a club, you're probably downloading a 320 kilobyte per second MP3.
Okay.
I try this with my vinyl snob friends all the time. You cannot tell the difference. You'd have to get a really trained ear to be able to tell the difference between a 320 kilobytes per second MP3 and a 16-bit wave.
Yeah, I mean,
the average music consumer would not be able to tell the difference one bit. Now, when you start moving down the bit rate, it would go 320, 256, which I think is what iTunes was when they were around.
Mm-hmm.
Then it goes from 256 down to 192, 192 down to 128.
Okay.
128 being the common small file size.
Yes.
So that was enticing because everybody would come across these 128 MP3s.
All right.
And we might be getting a little ahead of things, but when you'd go to download music, you'd be looking for a convenient file size. Sure. And if it's a long song, I mean, I'm specifically bringing up, long song because a lot of early club music was like seven to 9 minute long tracks. You can find some Eric Prydz tunes that are like 11 minutes.
Absolutely.
But if it was a long song, you'd think that a lot, 12,000 kilobytes, that's like 1.2 megabyte, I think is, I might be getting my conversions wrong. Sorry if I'm rusty. But the conversion by putting it in a 128 kilobytes per second MP3, you'd think that that's the right one you're going to download. It ends up, you download it. Let me get to the point. It ends up sounding like glass. It ends up sounding like someone ran it through a fucking sink.
Sure.
And if some of you might not know what that sounds like, some of you know exactly what I'm talking about. That's important.
Just really crunchy.
Yes.
Just sounds like you're walking over leaves.
Strange.
Paper.
Strange. Yeah. You know, it's not like 8-bit music or anything like that, but it sounds like someone tried to convert like, you know, like a Britney Spears song into like digital Britney.
Okay. Yeah. Well, and there were there were absolutely so many songs that you downloaded that one, you ran the risk of just absolutely crashing your family's computer.
Yes.
Which I definitely did. Sorry, Dad.
Mine was when we were talking about this over the weekend was Kazaa.
Kazaa was
ruined.
far more detrimental to anything that you could be doing to your computer. I just feel my computer felt so filthy after I opened and closed Kazaa. And it wasn't because I was downloading porn. I mean, I was, but that's besides the point. Maybe Kazaa was just for porn and Limewire was for music. I don't know. Who's to say?
I think Kazaa was the most accessible to get your hands on at first. And when someone on your school bus was like, yo, you're going to go home, you're going to download this program called Kazaa.
Yeah.
And then you can go into the search feature and you can find whatever you want.
Mm.
And that opened the floodgates to everything.
Yeah, I mean, well, let's pause real quick because we can't talk about Kazaa and LimeWire without really talking about Napster. My practical experience with Napster was, you know, extremely limited. I probably used it maybe once before it was shut down within that, you know, 2 years that it was running.
To be fair to the both of us, I think it was the kids that were like 2, 3, 4 years older than us.
Yeah.
When we must have been
I guess they're like Napster was around 99 to like late 2000.
We must have been in elementary school at that time. And I think, and also that makes sense because when you do start middle school, I think I started middle school in 2001 or 2002.
Yeah, whenever it was.
2000 or 2001. Maybe right in time for the millennium.
Okay.
Millennium, Y2K. We had so many freaking names for it. The year 2000. And then like some corny club track came out about the year 2000.
Always. Well, I mean, the Y2K song was Jennifer Lopez's Waiting for Tonight. That was released in preparation for the Y2K celebrations. So I just need everybody to know that Waiting for Tonight.
If I'm remembering that music video correctly, that was
it was
music video.
Just a lot of flowing gowns and club lights.
That's right.
And it was awesome. It was fantastic.
We'll get in. I feel like we should get into that tune later.
There's going to be another episode about Jennifer Lopez's career.
That definitely came out in the time that like J-Lo and like Madonna were trying to like hire like club producers to write their next album.
Well, and I guess, you know, certainly ahead of the curve a little bit in that regard, in that, you know, the accessibility of a lot of the music that was coming out now, it wasn't just going to be available on CDs. You could literally just put it right onto your computer without even having to burn a CD or do anything like that.
Well, we should talk a little bit about. We should go into that in a little bit later because I do want to talk about making mix CDs for your friends in high school because of course. The thing is we still downloaded MP3s, but we downloaded them
to put on CDs
with the purpose of burning it on a CD to put in your mom's
fascinates
car.
Which fascinates
right?
me.
It's such a weird the CD industry is lucky.
Well, and
maybe not the like actual physical album sales, but like. Trying to think what were the
CD manufacturers?
Yeah, like Staples, like going to Staples to buy a fat stack of those CDs. And I stuck on those CDs for a long time as a DJ too.
Of course, I have my entire CD rack back there that is useless.
Because we were talking about Napster.
Yeah.
I do think it was like the kids that were probably already in their early preteens and adolescence. And we're already in middle school. So we're looking at like 6th, 7th, 8th graders.
Okay.
Around that time. I think you and I were probably still in elementary school when Napster really took off.
Yeah, definitely.
Like at least I think I can remember turning the TV on and seeing Lars Ulrich like losing his shit. And you know what?
Because Sean Parker really pulled the fast one on him?
Yeah. And you know what's upsetting is I explained this to one of my classes. Like, as a kid, when you turn the TV on, you see Lars acting like an old curmudgeon because that's really what he was coming
Do you
off
go with
as.
curmudgeon? I usually go with crotchety old man.
What's
worse?
I think I've
Curmudgeon?
changed. I've changed.
We'll make that a poll.
I've changed
Curmudgeon
to
or crotchety old man?
because
What's
my
worse?
roommate in LA started talking about how he's like, this close to becoming a curmudgeon of an old man, and he's pretty close too. But, sorry, Josh. I think that's when I started using that term instead of saying crotchety old man. But Lars Ulrich was on MTV talking about his music sales and his music revenue.
Sure.
And he's coming off as a bit of a crotchety old man.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as a kid, you're like, what's this crotchety old man bitching and moaning about on the TV? But once you really get older and get into it and you kind of realize that we were in a complete period of like a cultural shift into something that would eventually lead to MP3 players. Who made the Zune? Was it Microsoft?
Yeah, probably.
Obviously, I haven't said anything about the iPod yet, but like the iPod, that's a given. That's a given. But
MP3 players that predate the iPod are really just fascinating devices.
I had a Rio Sport, I think it was called.
Yeah, I definitely had either Rio Sport or Samsung had.
The Rio ones were cool.
Sony did.
The real ones were cool. I
cool.
shot them out each and every time. I wasn't ready to give Apple their money yet. They ended up getting all of it later.
Well, I mean,
but
after 2004, it was over.
I remember the Rio Sport was cool because it looked like a fat watch head.
Okay,
and and it came since
we'll pull up a picture. We'll pull up a picture of the Rio Sport here.
I remember I had.
I gotta take a look then.
Yes, look up. Yeah, Rio Sport. There was one that was like almost like not camouflage, but it was like camouflage colors.
Okay.
Oh man.
Oh wow!
Yes,
that
one.
Yeah,
that one right there.
Yeah.
Because that
we'll,
came.
We'll throw that up on the green
screen.
That
came with the sports strap, and if you're like me,
okay.
I remember I used to hate going to the field to either run or train or play soccer, football if you're in Europe, sorry, or anywhere else in the world.
I hope I get that kind of reach.
I remember, you'd bring a Discman. You'd
sure.
load. You'd probably bring. You'd bring a CD in the Discman.
Okay.
Jock jams.
Yeah.
I think I remember one time.
Jock jams. Oh yeah, I definitely downloaded.
When I was
Jock
like
jams
a sad
Limewire.
8th grader, I had Yellow Card in there, and it would skip. Eventually, eventually, if you didn't have clothing or anything that kind of accounted for the fact that you wanted to run. Or walk and listen to music. So when the MP3 player came around, it's like, yo, that whole thing
accessibility
with skipping CDs, that's a thing of the past.
Yeah, but then you could only listen to those, whatever it was, 50 songs, and it became those 50 songs.
50 songs was a lot back then.
Yeah, of course it was.
You were like, I can get a whole 2 albums on here.
Those 50 songs became your life.
Yes. What were the ones on yours?
I mean,
first couple on your MP3
definitely Incubus, Drive, and Pardon Me were first two downloads.
I don't listen to enough Incubus.
I listen to a lot of Incubus.
Even having
I celebrate their entire collection.
Even having like a second phase, not a second. It probably was like a fourth or fifth. Where like I remember when I was living in the Valley in LA, I'd put 311 on to get in the mood, or like I was talking to AJ about Deftones and how I did not click with the Deftones as a kid, but when I got older, I became obsessed.
Of course.
What else? You said Incubus.
Yeah, definitely Incubus. I mean, Crazy Town for sure.
Crazy Town.
Definitely had Crazy Town. Definitely, I guess early Lil Wayne. So like
that's right. You were talking a lot about that over the weekend.
A lot of early Lil Wayne, like 500 Degrees and stuff like that.
I'm trying to think. Mine was probably Gorillaz.
Okay.
I think the MP3 player for me it signified an important shift in my music taste as well.
Sure.
Say it again.
I said sure.
Okay. So like. I remember instead of listening to so much think about it. When we're talking about CDs, right? I can clearly remember some of the CDs that I'd keep in my CD booklet or wallet.
Yeah, of course.
In middle school. And you're going to find out what I mean when I say my music taste evolving, right here in this moment. Funny enough, he's actually wearing a Y100 festival shirt.
I am.
I'm about to name a lot of bands that were at
with
one of the last. one of the last festivals that they ever threw. Maybe not one of the last ones, but the last ones one of the last few that were important to me. I had like CDs from like Finch.
Okay. Yeah, I remember Finch.
Alkaline Trio, which still hold up very well. Good Morning is still a fucking amazing album. I had Finch, Alkaline Trio. Reluctantly, I had Newfound Glory in there. No, it wasn't. It wasn't actually. No, it wasn't Newfound Glory. It was the Ataris.
Oh,
that I will
Atari,
say.
yeah,
I will say reluctantly.
Yeah, you can't. Really
that was
you can't be proud of that.
That was like one of those situations where I'd only listen to like 2 songs off the album. The rest of it was dirt.
Yeah.
Sorry if the Ataris are listening. Didn't vibe that hard eventually. And then, of course, if you're from like the Philadelphia area, or you lived on the East Coast, or you followed Jackass, you had CKY.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I used to have, so my dad used to work for Spencer's, and he would always come home with new Jackass or CKY or Bum Fights VHSs.
You're lucky. My mom hated that
I remember watching Jackass and Bum Fight double features at like 10 years old, and I saw them sniff a line of salt, and I was like, let's try it.
No.
And I
at
tried
10?
At 10.
At 10.
At 10. But anyway, to bring the focus back, one thing that I kind of did want to touch on was where Limewire succeeded and Napster failed, right? So I guess, was there anything that Mark Gordon, the guy who created Limewire, was there anything in your memory that stands out about what was better, in terms of their approach or anything like that?
Well, for starters, one of the big things that you could say the same thing about. No, we're not going to talk about Kazaa because they failed in a lot of aspects. But with LimeWire, I feel like they were able to jump through the legal hoops.
Okay.
Or maybe not. Maybe they didn't have any hoops to jump through in the beginning. But the thing is, all that spotlight was on Napster.
Okay.
So they were getting a lot of the shit.
Got it.
And while all that heat was on Napster, LimeWire didn't really take off till 4 years down the line.
Okay.
And I feel like it was probably around the same time, a reaction to the Napster lawsuits were like the birth of iTunes and the iTunes store.
Okay.
And providing us with, or for those of you that remember, like eMusic, where you'd like pay like a subscription fee per month, and then you'd be allowed like 80 downloads or something like that. But LimeWire was that I think the advantage with LimeWire, maybe not, I could tell you a lot of advantages of LimeWire versus the iTunes store.
Sure.
But like Napster kind of became that they had all this, they had so much bad press, and they were going after people that were using Napster and were uploading music to Napster.
Okay.
So you didn't, by the time like, your friend's older brother down the street got in trouble because he had Napster, because he had Napster on like, his, it wasn't a MacBook. What were they? The old Apple laptops or whatever.
Yeah. The ones with the handle.
Like, they looked all like aquatic.
Dude, those
you
were
get like
so
the
cool.
turquoise and like light gray.
That overall aesthetic is one thing that I particularly love. Just the colors that they had and just the way it looked, and you could see the inside.
You know what?
It was awesome. I loved it. I thought those computers were fucking
was it
awesome.
Aqua that did the song Barbie Girl?
Yeah.
Whenever I associate that song with those laptops.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah.
Because,
I see that 100%.
Maybe I'm like making up what their music video looked like color-wise and visually.
Yeah. Well, the colors definitely match. The colors 100% match.
Yeah, it was pretty on point for the times. But LimeWire had so much going for it. It was just if not more accessible to get your hands on. I think I couldn't even tell you if Napster was also offering other stuff you could download. Like movies.
If it was just outside of music.
You could download like EXE files.
Those
are like PC installation files.
Yeah, exactly. Obviously, I think that was one of the major driving successes that it had, that it offered that sort of accessibility. You could literally download any software or any program that was uploaded to it. So if that's something that LimeWire offered that Napster didn't, then that's definitely one.
I remember that wasn't the most popular aspect of LimeWire, but I remember you could get real tricky with it too. You could get your own like skin.
I
for
remember.
LimeWire.
Yeah, you could change
And I remember,
the skins. Those were
depending
so
on
cool.
depending on what your mood's in, maybe you had just downloaded like Matrix off
Okay.
of LimeWire, and now you feel like, now you're feeling like extra Neo. Every kid, anyone who saw the Matrix, any millennial that saw the Matrix is like, they had to have at least a 3-day period where all they wanted to do was talk like Neo or Morpheus and be convinced that we were living in some type of Matrix, which actually I'm more convinced as an adult than I am as a kid. But
that's, again, we'll save that for another episode.
like I feel like there was, LimeWire was so customizable. And it never failed me, except for the times that you download the wrong MP3 and it ended up being like a Trojan horse virus. Was it? Yeah. Was it it was called a Trojan virus?
Yeah, it was called a Trojan virus.
And then you'd have to walk down to Staples, go get Norton antivirus, go through all the troubleshooting and fixing your family computer yourself so that your mom doesn't yell at you because, I don't know, a Heather Brooke video destroyed the family computer or something.
Well, iDeepthroat.com did a lot of damage to a lot of computers and a lot of young boys' hearts.
We could absolutely spend all the time talking about the porn that we downloaded on.
I don't want to get into that.
But
I don't. It's unnecessary right now.
I would love to tell you that that's actually what broke the family computer, but it was actually just it was just poor choices of downloading
and
the wrong
downloading those a lot.
Downloading the wrong DJ Tiesto set.
Yep.
Or it was get the entirety of In Search of Sunrise.
Okay, yeah.
And then, you go hang out with your friends, and then, your dad's cussing you out on the phone because now his Earthlink email, he can't even get into it.
Can't print out those MapQuest pages.
MapQuest.
Oh my god! Printing out a MapQuest page is I think the last time I did that was probably 2007, and you never knew it was going to be your last time until you look back and think about it. It's so sad.
Also, when I think about MapQuest, I think about how dangerous MapQuest is. If you're driving, you're trying to read directions.
Think about maps. Think about how dangerous maps were.
We have it good with the phone now, because now you can set the accent of the person screaming directions at you.
I would argue Garmin, great product. Garmin GPSs those were legit.
They were the helpful one. Yeah.
Those were very helpful. The voice
those
was
were
great,
also before the smart. Those were before the smartphone.
Yeah,
I think,
that was
right?
before smartphone. Yeah, I remember having one in my '98 Jeep Grand Cherokee. Okay, but anyway, kind of just, tying everything that we talked about today together, one thing that I really want to come away with from every podcast is, why this matters, why it's important to think about these things and how it affects how we listen to music today. One example would be streaming services, right? And an opinion that I really wanted to get from you was, are streaming services good for artists, bad for artists? Obviously, there's a lot of data suggesting that it's not that great, and there's just, really not much to be gained from it other than an audience. So what is your opinion on how this evolution kind of led to where we are now in the way music is, one, listened to, but two, also, put out?
Well, I think accessibility.
Okay.
Before I forget that word, that's the first thing we should throw out here.
We're gonna have a big accessibility.
When we look at the cycle of the music consumption in the past 40 years, it all comes down to accessibility.
Sure.
And while I think audiophiles and serious music fans, I'm not talking about you can be a music fan and go to shows. I'm talking about serious music fans where they are a bit of an audiophile, where they want to go as far as
they can discern between quality, pretty seamlessly.
And things matter to them, like listening to something on vinyl. And I know the untrained ear isn't going to be able to tell me the difference between an MP3.
Sure.
If we pulled up a 96 kilobyte per second MP3 in a vinyl record, the difference is night and day.
Yeah, of course.
I hear that from my mom all the time, who's been an avid music listener. My whole I come from a whole family of enormous music fans.
As do I, yeah.
And I mean, you know, and my dad also works in music, and my mom's biggest complaint is the digital sound that she gets from things like Sonos, Spotify.
We don't notice it because we never, you know, I mean, in my day-to-day, if I stream something Bluetooth to one of my speakers, am I going to notice the huge difference if I play it directly out of a stereo system? Probably not. It's not that discernible on specific types of music released today. But the music that your mom was talking about,
like what you said right there, music released today.
Exactly. That's the point that I wanted to make. Music released today is not discernible in quality across platforms, whereas music released and recorded for different mediums 40 years ago needs to be appreciated and listened to that way.
This is actually why that's kind of how I started buying vinyl last year. It like when the pandemic started as like retail therapy. Yeah. Because I was like,
that's what I just did recently.
I went down a rabbit hole on like old Jamaican music, everything from like ska to like early ska. None of this like Real Big Fish shit.
No. Original dub plates.
Like what's his name? There's that tune Al Capone that David Rodigan always talks about.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Prince something. Oh man. Anyway, if you listen to that tune Al Capone on Spotify versus the vinyl press, you're like, oh my god, this was never meant to be heard through a streaming service. But to get into streaming and I don't know the whole cycle of music, we're looking at accessibility all the time. The easier it is for people to listen to music, this goes in a lot with like attention span and instant gratification.
That's
and
the,
like
that's the
how
other
spoiled how spoiled we are as like first world Americans that are able to listen to any song at any given moment just by pulling phones out of our pockets.
And the way I look at it too is the years went on, it became easier and easier to skip entire portions of an artist's work.
Yes.
Right? So on a record, obviously you can see where the grooves are, you can see what you're going to select, but it's not like you can press a button and boom, it's done. CD, that changes everything. You move on to MP3s. Now you don't even have to listen to the entire CD. You can just get that one song.
That goes into the attention span thing big time.
Exactly, and that's where I think led us to today.
I don't think it's entirely attention span. I think accessibility is something that hindsight's 20/20.
Of course, it's so much easier to look back and
when
criticize
you get presented with this.
When
you get presented with this opportunity to make something accessible, in the ways that we consume music, everybody at first is like, this is brilliant. If you're, if you're a startup company too, then if you have something that you think is cutting edge, of course you want that product to get out to the people. Where I'm not so stoked on the accessibility is like how the content creators are being compensated down the line. Now we've got,
that's the biggest issue.
Now we got streaming. Now we got CEOs of streaming companies that are looking at buying like English Premier League football teams.
And off the backs of all of the artists that they are now making accessible. So that's the trade-off, audience versus, financial gain.
I think where it's, should we get into like whether it's good or bad for artists?
I mean,
because I think you asked that prior.
I am curious what your opinion on that sort of platform.
The thing when we look at something such as streaming or the rise of the MP3, and we look at, is this a good thing or is this a bad thing? Nobody ever takes a step back and they're like, why do we keep looking at this in a binary perspective?
That's fair.
Because
if
the
there
thing
are gray
is,
areas to it, let's hear it.
It might even out on what's good. I heard a stand-up comedian say this one time. There's always something bad that happens on the back of change that is good.
Yeah.
And when I heard that the first time, that fucked me up a little bit because I realized
we're gonna have to find the quote for that.
I realize that there's a lot of truth in that, because where the MP3 is great because now, as an artist myself, the MP3 is great because I can send music to people out in Scotland and make
and your global reach has increased significantly.
I can make producer buddies through MySpace by sending them MP3s that I uploaded through SendSpace or MediaFire or ZippyShare.
Oh, ZippyShare. The good old days.
Or like You Send It or something like that.
Yep, I remember all of those.
But we don't notice what's bad until it shows up 4 years down the line.
Of course.
Where, if we look at if we focus on the MP3, like MP3 is great because it means now I can get my music. I don't have to ship vinyl records out to my pals out in the UK to play at their show later that week. I don't need to think. I can just send them an MP3 and they've got
it's not going to get lost.
They can get it. They can get it and burn it on a CD and play it in their set that night.
Yeah.
Maybe by using something like AOL Instant Messenger.
Yeah.
But where, while that's great because now there's, now music's becoming even more shareable in every way possible. We don't take in consideration who's getting compensated for their creative endeavors until it's too late.
Of course, until much, much after the fact, until they've already built the audience.
Exactly. Like, I think iTunes, the iTunes store was interesting because they were like, look, we're going to be legal.
That shit was expensive.
We're going to be,
I mean, it was completely in the benefit of the artists. I mean,
absolutely. Like, and
$5 for a song.
And that helped digital distribution 100%. Of music become, they made it more accessible where distributors no longer had to prep physical product. They just needed to make sure that the iTunes store was ingesting the WAV file and the metadata that came with it.
So that the quality would still maintain.
Well, here's the thing.
CD
this is what I'm
MP3.
getting at with the iTunes store. And this is where, to make things less shareable, remember they had it in encrypted files. I don't know if it was an MP4, an M4A, or like an encoded M4A, I think it might have been. Where you couldn't send those files to your aunt without having to open. If you double clicked on that file, it would ask you to log in on iTunes.
Yes, that's right. Yep.
So they were trying to do something where they were like, gatekeeping, not gatekeeping, but they're lessening the shareability.
So that just the owner of the digital copy is the one that could access it.
I feel like that's, I feel like that was something that was very restricted and not that accessible. Definitely a step in the right direction.
Definitely a step in the right direction.
But they had iTunes had their time. But what it just made it so much easier, to go get Limewire.
Yeah.
And download a higher quality version of what you're getting off of iTunes.
Yeah. Of what the legal route would get you.
Something I noticed, it took me too late when I was downloading music for DJ sets. Not that, let's be real, the DJ sets were probably in the attic of my parents' house. With those Gemini turntables and whatnot.
Those early sets.
But I didn't notice until it was too late. You're getting 256 kilobytes per second. M4As through iTunes.
Yeah.
And if you're paying that kind of money, you should be getting 320 kilobytes per second quality. So as a DJ, when you actually can go to a club, this happened later on when I actually started DJing on a circuit in 2008, you'd notice a large difference between something like if you go to the club and you play a 256, or sometimes iTunes would limit it to 128 kilobytes per second, and you'd go play that song. I remember if I was playing T-Pain
butchering
records,
music, T-Pain.
T-Pain. T-Pain was a winner when I was doing mobile DJing.
Just a great singer on and off auto tune.
At a college campus or something like that. T-Pain was always a winner.
T-Pain always hits. He doesn't miss.
But I noticed his tunes that I was getting from iTunes were in 128 kilobytes per second, and you could hear that on the PA systems that I'd be using.
Yeah. So if you're just listening to that on your computer, you're like, oh yeah, it's fine. But when you blast that out to any studio monitors or club monitors or anything like that, the quality is so noticeably terrible.
Yes.
It's wild. And you figure it out after your first few sets. You're like, well, I am never playing that song again.
Yes. Unfortunately, this is now we have the same situation with people that like to rip music off of YouTube. With those
SoundCloud,
really cheap YouTube to MP3 converters.
Yep.
But basically what I'm getting at is that where iTunes asks you for quite a bit of money, more than you're used to for digital files, it ended up, you had the option where you could go get higher quality for free.
Okay.
So why wouldn't I do that when you don't, as a kid, you're a little shit, so you don't think, how am I supporting the creator? How am I supporting the artist?
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't happen until you're like late 20s. I should give some credit to some of the early 20s audiophiles, but for the most part, your average music listener isn't thinking, how can I support the artist?
Okay, yeah. And that's just, I mean, that's just the causality of all of this.
The thing that was, okay, so while iTunes made it less enticing for you to jump on because I couldn't get full quality 320, that would make me hop back on Limewire or sift through Zippy Share or sift through, I don't know, some Russian MP3 site with .ru at the end of it.
Always .ru. Always .ru.
So where it's bad for artists, it was just a cycle where nobody's getting paid. And the thing is, like, where is the money coming from? And that's what caused artists to like double down on touring and, you know, maybe raise their gig fees a little bit. Because what's good is now you're not limited to your distribution deal. You're accessible to the entire globe if they have the internet.
Sure.
So, you know, I think about somebody like, this probably isn't a good example.
Well,
I'm going to use it anyway.
Use it anyway.
But I recently have been like listening to a lot of music from this guy Todd Edwards, who was like a UK garage. I'm going to say garage.
I hate you.
We got to separate the genre from where I park the car.
The genre and the place where you park your car are two very different things.
Todd Edwards is this like UK garage legend, and his music really didn't take off until the late 90s, early 2000s.
Okay.
And while a lot of his music was coming out on vinyl and vinyl only, he's from New Jersey. And he became a UK legend. Now that's definitely with the help of like DJ EZ playing his music and like, you know, the tough
support from other artists,
the Tough Jam guys that were playing his music out. But the thing is, when did we get YouTube? What year?
2004, 2005.
So that is actually kind of late. But the thing is, if you were somewhere around the world, I don't need to be somewhere where Todd Edwards records are being distributed to. I could go on a LimeWire, punch in Todd Edwards, Save My Life, and even if it was a vinyl only release, somebody would rip the vinyl and put it on LimeWire. So now my demographic that I'm covering has been expanded to the entire globe.
Sure.
So now you might start getting bookings in places you never expected you'd be getting booked at.
Especially in areas where that type of music is going to be more popular and more, you know, well received.
So I guess in some sense, it's like, cool. Now you're doing a lot of touring. Now as an artist, you're seeing the entire world if things went well for you. I feel like someone who definitely benefited from the digital age and the MP3, I mentioned his name earlier, probably Tiesto.
Yeah.
Because I think for millennials, they were in college by the time electronic dance music became enormous in the U.S.
Of course.
Yeah. I'd say between 2008 and 2012 were those
really were the years.
The big years where it became, I'm not talking about, for all you underground heads telling me it was in the States in the 90s, techno came from Detroit, all that. I'm not talking about
We're talking about in the mainstream.
I'm talking about the masses.
Yeah.
So Tiesto benefited entirely from having all of his stuff all over the internet and how I could go onto Limewire and watch his performance playing opening with like a Marcel Woods tune. If you get that reference, shout out to you.
Love Marcel Woods.
But you know, he's also a DJ. So the thing is, like, he's not. A lot of the perks of being a DJ would be going to play somebody else's music at a venue, and it's not so much about, you know, a set list. It's more about showing up to a venue for 4 hours or playing a 3-hour set and reading a crowd. And if touring, if touring is what is making your money, by the time he became a superstar in like 2010, 2011, 2012, like, I'd say before Skrillex really took off, Tiesto was definitely the biggest superstar in dance music.
He was the guy.
And without things like LimeWire putting our generation onto...
I think that's a huge cause and effect, 100%.
With
the way that people listen to music and the way that streaming services took off after those people who were really invested in building their libraries, those are the same people that went and, you know, did exactly what you said. That's how they're searching out to find the music. That's how they're building the brand of these artists, is by promoting it in that sort of way. So, I mean, that's the long and short way to say, you know, good for the artist's brand, bad for their budget. Initially starting out. Now, once the brand is built,
I think
the budget
if
comes.
We're focusing on MP3s specifically, I know, because I know we were. It's mainly if we talk about how streaming has become a factor in the last 10 years. I think that also that's a whole different beast in itself versus the MP3, because there is less crate digging.
Okay.
And the irony, they're letting an algorithm do the crate digging for them.
Okay.
So what makes me a little sad is, like, it makes me think that people care about their music less, because, you know, for us
as simple as just deleting it.
I mean, you know, just forgetting about, and you know, you build a playlist and then you share a playlist with a friend, and then the thing is, everything's, you know, a shuffleable playlist. It's like a Spotify jukebox.
You can't keep the integrity
like
of something that you've created. You know, well, I would rather say curated. That is going to be able to kind of just be moved around in, you know, the ways maybe you're not intending it to be listened to.
And don't get me wrong,
all the time.
I like my Spotify playlists.
I love my Spotify playlists.
But
I live and die by them.
I would not trust a Spotify editorial playlist to guide my taste.
Okay.
That's simple. I worry that I worry that we're getting
interesting stance.
We're getting deep into it now, but like
I don't know how much more time we have to get deep into it, but
I worry that, like, there's a lot that gets missed, because there are some people that have opted out of doing anything with Spotify because they don't agree with
the royalties.
They don't agree with the royalty conversion. And, you know, they'd rather sell their music through Bandcamp so that people are still at least getting a file.
And I think I saw a tweet the other day that buying an artist's music on Bandcamp, or, you know, wherever you could buy it, is essentially the same as streaming their music every day for 3 years.
Yes.
Which, you know, blew my mind, but also makes a ton of sense. So if there are artists that, you know, are, I guess, at a certain level in their career, that if me buying that can support them, 100% I would do that.
Also, this is Bandcamp's definitely a thing in the past 10 years. Well, more than it was anything having to do with Y2K. Yeah. But the files still exist through Bandcamp.
Sure,
you're still downloading an MP3, and you can pick whether you want a wave. You can pick whether you want an MP3, and you can pick whether you want a FLAC. Size, and I think the price is the same for every single one.
Well, that's good.
But like, what's kind of
didn't Beatport have different prices for different quality that you could? Yeah,
yes, I think they still do.
It wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me. I mean, there's a premium on it, obviously. Yeah. So, but I think honestly we covered so much more than I thought we would cover in our initial plan, which I love. I love how much, you know, the breadth of knowledge that certainly you brought to this conversation, but I hope that, you know, everybody else listening and watching is going to take away that there certainly are cause and effect into what the advent of the MP3 brought, and how streaming services obviously have kind of exploited that to a certain degree. Well, I think that's it for me, Des. I really appreciate you coming on, man. This was great.
It,
this has been such a fun experience for me. You're gonna be on a lot more. We're gonna be doing this a lot.
I'll be back to talk about new metal.
Yeah, we're gonna do a new metal episode at some point. I think the next episode I'll be doing maybe my mom and I will talk about Office Space and Y2K. So we'll see you next time.